Ethan Thomas, a 28-year-old Missouri resident, went to college to become a dietitian. He successfully graduated and worked in the healthcare industry for about 3 years until he realized the stressful and physically taxing environment just wasn't really where he belonged. This is Ethan Thomas's story. Check it out.
Originally, I started out just working on the clinical side of dietetics. I was really just mainly working inside of nursing homes. And eventually we actually had our entire company get laid off from one of the larger corporations for nursing homes, and so I was out of the job for a little bit. And then one of my managers came to me and asked me if I wanted to work more closely with the kitchens than what I was doing before. So for the next 2 years, I worked inside of various kitchens. And when you think about these kitchens, I want you to think kitchen nightmares from like that Gordon Ramsay was in. These were not the best places that they were sending me by any means. You'd have a lot of dirty kitchens, residents not being treated quite how they should be. It was some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done, but at the same time, it was some of the most physically and mentally taxing that I think that anyone could ever do. And so I think it would be difficult for anybody to keep that up for too long. And that's what kind of led me into looking into these boot camps and trying to figure out if I could find a different career path. My background is I was actually in college a first-generation student. So nobody had gone to college before me. We grew up really poor. No internet, no computers or anything like that. And so the idea of what computer programming was, I didn't even grasp in the slightest. So it was really interesting being actually able to examine that for the first time. And when I had first heard about it was from my mother-in-law, and she had kind of talked about computer programming here and there because she's a senior developer. And then my wife actually wound up going through the course, and she learned quite a bit and seemed pretty excited by it. And so I was like, well, I need some way that I can still make a livable wage like I am now, but that I'm not going to die by the time I'm 40 from stress. And so I wound up trying out the initial portion of the boot camp, put my $200 down for deliverable 1 and 2, and I immediately realized it was something that I was going to have a blast with. My second deliverable, I wound up making a pirate-themed buffet, and had a ton of fun with that. It wound up being way more complicated than it needed to be in any way, shape, or form. It was silly, it allowed for creativity, and it just really clicked in. It was almost this fun puzzle that you could just build this beautiful thing with. And that's really where it kind of clicked off for me of like, oh, okay, I'm pretty all right at this, and it's gonna be a lot of fun too, so. When I was still working, I'd be gone for 2 to 3 months at a time. Typically, the days would be between 12 to 16 hours. You're lucky if you got a day off. I had multiple times where I was going 20 plus days. And I remember my wife sitting down, she was working as a vet tech at the time, and she was just burnt out. You know, there's that industry, they underpaid, overworked, she's getting bit by dogs, you know. And she's like, well, I need to make a change. And so that her mother originally pointed her in that direction, saying that a lot of the people that she worked with actually came from Grand Circus as well. So I knew that if her mom was working with Grand Circus people, it sounded like that there was some pretty high quality candidates at least coming out, you know. And so that was, she went through the boot camp, she learned a ton, and so then my big goal was to try to follow up afterwards. I think that the biggest initial thought was I have no idea what's going on, this is just some type of black magic or sorcery. When somebody said front end versus back end, I would not be able to tell you what that was 3 months ago. Now I feel like I could firmly tell you what it is. So really, I just kind of going in blind was the big thing. My mother-in-law and my wife both do back-end stuff a little bit more. And so that's kind of what pulled me towards that area as well. I was like, okay, well, you guys know what's going on, so I guess I'll go ahead and follow behind. And so far it's been pretty great. It was awesome to see what people had done with JavaScript and everything like that. But I'm really excited for what I'm going to be able to do with the full stack that we learned. My instructor was Justin. He really knocked it out of the park. One of the big areas that I'd like to emphasize with the things that he did that were really helpful and useful is he would go above and beyond to make sure that we had resources available, even if he had to create them himself, to ensure that we were able to learn at the paces that we were wanting to. Because some of us were learning at slower rates, others were learning at faster rates. And so, I mean, for example, he made sure that he got us a link worksheet so that we could go through all of the link information if we were curious about it. So while some people were still having a little bit more difficulty in one area or another, being able to make sure that you could continue your learning that was kind of built at your own pace if you were driven was excellent. And so that was one of the things that I definitely enjoyed. Biggest thing that I enjoyed was definitely the group projects. You know, the Grand Circus does a good job at building the base for you. And when you actually get into those group projects with other individuals, that's, I think, where the greatest amount of learning really comes in, is you might understand kind of what's going on with the flow of information, but until you do it with your own critical thinking, it's difficult to actually do it, is really the basis. And so that was huge for us, is just having that collaboration with others in our groups. So our final project was Adventure Finder, was what we wound up calling it in the very end. It was National Park Finder for the longest time. Was designed around the National Parks API. So what we found is that the National Parks have a free API available, and we were like, oh, well, your website's real rough. If you're actually wanting to use it for a search engine or anything along those lines to easily find information out, you have to do a lot of digging. You know, you're going to go through 3, 4, 5 interfaces before you finally get to a way to properly search for the parks. And so what we did is we looked at that and we said, hey, how can we make this more efficient, more user-friendly? And so we worked on building out a search method initially just to make sure that you could go through every single one of the national parks. Afterwards, we then continued to work on it, and we still at this point in time are continuing to work on it, where we're trying to add in more planning aspects so that when you want to go on that national park trip, it really allows you to make a full plan for what you're wanting to do. And it's been an absolute blast. The level of detail that you can find on that website, I feel, is probably higher than what you have on the National Parks website, and it's a lot easier to find. You know, you're 3 clicks away if you're searching on Adventure Finder versus going through multiple pages and digging to find a good search engine on the National Parks website. There's still so much more that we have planned for it, so I'm really excited for it.